That started, Chair.
Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the FDC Audit and Governance meeting on the 9th of December at 7:01. Before we get going, I have to read this out to you. I would like to remind everyone present that this is a virtual meeting and will be broadcast live to the internet or filmed and will be capable of being repeated viewings or another use by such third parties. Please can I also remind members of the public who have registered to speak that they will be admitted to the meeting at the appropriate time. Please also be aware that if technical difficulties interrupt the meeting that cannot be overcome, I may need to adjourn the meeting. Thank you. Well, once again, welcome everybody, and welcome to Tony Jarvis, who's our first independent member for this season. Okay, if we go on, apologies for absence.
There are no apologies for absence except for our guest, who is the external auditor, Craig Wisdom from Deloitte. Unfortunately, he has COVID.
Thank you. And we have two members who haven't apologised and haven't turned up either.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Declarations of interest. Anybody? No? I take it no declarations of interest. Minutes, which are pages 5 to 14, I believe, for the last meeting. Any comments on the minutes for the last meeting? None? Okay, minutes agreed from last meeting. Matters arising. Any matters arising? No matters arising. Right, the next item is on your agenda is 12A, appointment of Vice Chairman. I think if we bring this forward now, get this one out of the way straight away. As you know, if the chairman of this committee is a member, then the vice chairman must be one of the independent cultured people. We only have one of those at the moment, that's Tony Jarvis. And so in that respect, I think we'd like a nomination for Tony as vice chairman of this committee. Would anybody like to nominate Tony?
I'll do it.
Simon, thank you. And a seconder?
I'm happy to second. Oh, right. Okay. Basil has said he would like to second that.
The next question is, Tony, are you willing to be the vice chairman?
Thank you, Chairman. I am. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so Laura, I think that means that Tony is now the vice chairman. Thank you, Tony. Welcome.
Congratulations.
Right, okay, let's move on then. So first we go to 6. Laura, if you correct me if I'm reading out the wrong numbers, because I know there's two versions of this.
Yeah, apologies to everybody, I will.
Okay. Which is the Audit and Governance Committee work programme on pages 15 and 16.
Chair, I'd just like to say that the anti-fraud and corruption strategy will be coming to the next meeting. It's just going through the approval process through the corporate governance group at the moment.
So agenda item 6, then all the work programme. I just pointed one thing out, that the date of the 23rd of November should actually be the 9th of December, which is today. Minor point. So the review of the edge forward, as you say, is 20th January now, the next meeting after the new year. Other comments, anybody? Right, let's move on. Item 7, the Internal Audit Monitoring Report for November 2020. Sarah?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just take you through the internal audit progress report. So we're making steady progress through the audit plan that was approved earlier in the year. We're just starting the Qualis governance audit at the moment. And there's a chance that the Qualis commercial one may slip into next year, but it depends on our timings with the governance one. And you can also see that I brought in some additional support to help deliver that plan to make sure that we do deliver it. And there's no additional cost for that service. It's all part of the package that you pay for. So we're reporting on one report, which is the active. Sorry, I'm just lost where I am. The Active Directory Management audit, which was given moderate assurance. And this was a technical piece of work undertaken by an IT specialist. An Active Directory Management is a directory service developed by Microsoft for the administration of all PCs and servers on a Windows domain. We've kept the amount of detail quite bland in the progress report because we don't want the technical detail to go out in the public domain, but so we just highlighted there that there is some more work to be done on passwords, on dormant accounts, security logs and servers, which the IT department are working on as we speak. Moving on to the recommendation tracker. Really good news here is that we've only got 3 outstanding recommendations, which is I think the lowest we've ever had. 2 of the recommendations are to do with health and safety, and I'd just like to give assurance to the committee that these are being actively worked on as we speak. We've taken on additional support for our health and safety officer. We've set up a health and safety strategic group, of which I sit on. We also have a health and safety operational group, and they're working on all these points. So the main focus at the moment is on the risk assessments to make sure that they're in place and up to date. We've got a new reporting system for staff to report any accidents or near misses, and are also developing our training and awareness. The third recommendation is to do with asbestos management and about a policy on that. I'm pleased to say that was approved by Cabinet on the 3rd of December. Internal audit have been really busy at the moment, helping support the council. Along with the corporate fraud team, we're helping with the grants work, as well as helping process them, as well as looking any potential frauds. Also been giving additional help to the finance department while they've got some, just to help them move things along in a speedy manner. And lastly, the report talks about the corporate fraud team. They're continuing to vet all right to buys. Normally they would go and visit applicants in their home. They're obviously not able to do that at the moment, so this has been successfully done via Zoom, obviously with the applicant's permission. And also they've been working on a number of successions in conjunction with housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions for Sarah, anybody? One question here, Sarah, on Active Directory. IT are working on it. What's their target date?
I don't know. I'll get back to you on that one.
You need to pin them down.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah. We don't let anything get past us.
Okay. Thank you very much then. If there's no questions, let's move on to item 8. The review of term of reference.
Thank you, Chair. So in line with good practice, we review the committee's terms of reference on an annual basis, and we compare them against the SIPFA model and review against other councils as well. And on the basis of that, there's no changes proposed. The terms of reference talks about having co-opted members, so we're thankful for Tony Jarvis joining us. We did do a recruitment campaign. We had some other candidates, but they didn't quite fit the criteria, so we will be going back out to advert again in the new year. Talking about the audit committee effectiveness, so we've used the SIPFA checklist to measure yourself against, and the good news is that you're able to demonstrate compliance with recommended good practice for an effective audit committee. The skills and knowledge analysis is ongoing at the moment, and I'm just chasing up the last few returns to report back at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Just on one point here, just to remind people, I picked this up, that we are responsible for the appointment of the council's external auditors. It's something which we might want to remember in a few months' time. Any questions for Sarah then on this topic?
Well, one, maybe. Do we need to expand our remit to look at Qualis?
That's in there already as part of sort of partnerships and good governance. So we don't need to make a specific reference to it, in my opinion. It comes under the partnerships bit.
It's covered by partnerships, yeah. And liaison with Andrew, S151 officer.
Yes, so if I may, I think all governance issues fall under the remit of this committee, and therefore Qualis fits within that quite neatly anyway. Performance and monitoring of Qualis so does probably sit with the select committees and cabinet.
I was meaning more in terms of, as the sole shareholder, whether we can view all of the documents that support any kind of decision making by Qualis, or is that commercially sensitive? That's the trade-off.
Chair, if I may, I think it's more the governance framework that this committee would be responsible for, making sure that the right governance mechanisms are in place, as opposed to monitoring, actually what actions and its performance. Because I think performance, as I say, fits into the remit of probably one of the stronger select committees, or overview and scrutiny. Actually, I think it went to overview and scrutiny last time. Sorry, Chair, I think you're on mute.
So the scrutiny committees get to see all the documents out of Qualis then?
They can see documents that are made available to the council, but they'll probably would be commercial and therefore on pink papers. But yes, they would have access to those.
As main shareholders, we should have access, shouldn't we? Somebody should have access. Maybe that's you.
We do have access, Chair, yes.
So we can ask you the question, can't we?
You can.
Okay.
We do need to delineate the boundary of commercially sensitive and what we need to know as the sole shareholder.
Agree.
Okay, you're happy with that, Simon, Councillor?
Oh, never. I'll never be happy, but I'll move on.
Move on to Sarah. Okay. Anybody else?
Can we minute that, Chairman?
Right.
Please do.
Well, have we finished with that? Move on to item 9. Okay, agenda item 9, which is the risk management, which is Andrew, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the item updates the committee on the status of the current risk register and the risks that the council is facing. The report summarises those, and the attached appendix set out in more detail the nature of the risks, the impact of the risks, and what mitigation actions that the council is taking in response to that. And it also says the risk untreated, and also identifies what the risk is with the mitigations in place as well in terms of a risk rating score. And they appear in the appendix within that 16 box grid that's attached. The main changes, I think, since the last time this committee saw the risk register, are probably we've downrated the risk for economic development slightly, only marginally, but to reflect the fact that there are a number of economic development actions now in place in the council to try and bolster the economy locally through positive action. The other two changes are the removal of 2 risks. One, the staff travel plan, because it was always a subset of the accommodation strategy, and therefore should be dealt with under that heading. The other one that's been removed as a standalone risk is Qualis, because its impact on the council is in relation to its budgetary impacts on the council, and therefore comes under now the financial risk for the council, has been subsumed into within that one and get separate reference under that heading. That's it.
Wallace, what about reputational risk to the council? Does that come in anywhere? Let's say Wallace, the vans get a bad reputation for cutting people up on highway or whatever. And that reflects on us, doesn't it? So that's a risk, isn't it?
It is a risk. I guess. I mean, it is. This is presented for the views of committee in terms of the amendments have been done within the officer-based risk group, and this was their conclusion. But it's presented to the audit committee for, as I say, for their perspective on this and whether they agree with the changes that have been made.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments on that changes made?
Councillor Heath and Captain Jarvis.
Councillor Heath?
Well, nobody's going to be surprised about what I'm going to say. Climate emergency at B2 with mitigation factors. This isn't a risk. This is actually happening. So I'm sure everybody listening is aware of the meteor impact in 65 million years ago that will kill the dinosaurs and put the CT boundary all over the world. Same layer of mud all over the world. 55 million years ago, there was the PETM, the Pliocene-Eocene thermal maximum. Over 2,000 years, the temperature went up between 2 and 7 degrees. There was no ice caps. There were crocodiles on the South Pole. In the last 200 years, we've gone up 1.2 degrees. This is happening now. Don't mess around with this thing. This is not B2. This is A1. It's not even a risk. It's happening.
Do you think that the risk is inevitable? Does it cease to be a risk because it's happening? There's nothing.
No. I think the point is that you could be the straw that breaks the camel back. Why be the straw? We can do something to stop this. Let's do this thing. And what this thing means is, well, it encompasses every single activity that we do. And I can't say any more because I might have to make decisions on another thing later on, so I can't overexpress. But it's happening. It's not a risk. It's happening.
Yep.
Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I suppose. I mean, whilst I don't underestimate its significance at a global level and on the population as a whole. I think that this is contained though to this council and the actions that this council can take in respect of that risk. And the question is, therefore, has the council got a plan in place to try and address the risks at a local level in terms of the sphere of influence that it has? And I think what this risk is trying to say is that there are plans in place now to try and address that in terms of the things that we can control as a council. Not that we can control the global emergency that the climate change is, but we can have an influence at a local level, and we have plans in place to try and deal with that. And I think that's what's reflected within this risk and this risk rating.
Do those plans include photovoltaics everywhere? Do those plans include wind turbines? Do those plans include not having algal bloom in the rivers and lakes that might be nearby? What?
I think what it's saying is that the plan is being developed, and we put a sustainable officer in. Well, we've secured the services of the sustainable officer to try and develop a detailed plan that will identify what actions we can or need to take as a council locally.
It's taken 3 years, it'll be 5 years between accepting the local plan, even in its rough form, and getting it actually through, which is going to happen maybe spring next year. And you're talking about developing a climate action plan? Come on. It's got to happen now. Not messing around anymore. This is now. This means buses. This means not having, I can't say.
Chair, can I possibly come in here? Because there is an important point that I think Mr. Small made, which is what we're looking at here. There are things within the power and remit of this council to do within the constraints that we have to operate under. Councillor Heath is right. We have something that is a climate emergency. As Councillor Heath knows, I was the seconder of the motion that brought forward our council declaration into that climate emergency. However, we have to look at it in terms of what we as a council can do in a point where we have a finite budget so to do. There are many things that could be done on a global scale if there was the ability and finance to do it. Buses everywhere, maybe, that might be a good idea. I personally think of demand responsive transport as something that's much more effective, particularly if we can deploy that using something like electrical vehicles. But the bus service within this district is primarily the responsibility of the county council, not the district council. And I think that's the point Mr. Small is making, that the risk register here is stuff that we as a council can do. We put in the budget last year put in funding for a sustainability officer. We've recruited to that post. I think Mr. Kesey would agree with me that it's important to get the right person, not somebody who just plays lip service to the sustainability thing. We've got that in place. They're working through a plan. So given that we only budgeted as a council for it last February to start searching in this financial year, which, as we all know, has been a somewhat challenging year anyway, to get that in place and to be moving forward, easy step in the right direction. Are we all the way there? Absolutely not. Is there more to do? Absolutely. But in terms of looking at the risk register, with a risk is something that may happen. If we genuinely want to say that the climate emergency is something that is happening and does not therefore fall from a risk, it shouldn't be in the risk register. I believe the risk is around us and how we can move things forward in our capability against the backdrop of the climate emergency, and that's what's being rated in this risk register.
Thank you, Councillor Philip.
Apologies to the younger viewers, but I think we're at risk of talking the talk and walking like Zebedee.
Okay, what's Councillor Philip is saying, the bigger picture, we can only do what we can do and not address the larger picture, which you're talking about. What sort of things would you expect us to do?
Well, it's you talk about the larger picture and everybody talks about global action. We don't need global action. If you're talking about the whole world, it's China, America, Europe. That's all that you need to change. So we can just say, okay, it's the county council's responsibility. Let's push. Let's try harder. Let's really go for this thing. Let's make ourselves the beacon. What's wrong with that? Aim higher is what I'm asking for. Photovoltaics, we can change that. We can actually say every house that is built, every building that is built has to have photovoltaics. Why not? Try it.
Okay.
What's the risk of that?
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments on this at all?
If I might, Chairman, just to say, in spite of all the good works that Councillor Heap has mentioned, I'm not sure that the Communist Party of China is going to take any notice of them, because if they do, they'll be eaten alive by their own people. And that's one of the problems. You're dealing with people who have got a completely different agenda to the rest of the world. However,
China has more photovoltaics than America right now, and it has done that in the last 5 years.
They may well have, but they're still building more coal-fired power stations than anyone else. Oh,
no, they're not. Germany is.
Perhaps the Indians are. Anyway, I think Mr. Jarvis wanted to speak.
Mr. Jarvis?
I sort of hesitate to try and follow that debate, Chairman, but my point was really to sort of thank the officers for this report. It's one of the better risk management reports I've seen. It lays out the stuff pretty well, and what's more, it's got actions which you can see have been derived from the risks. So it's always a very difficult thing to do, a risk report, a risk analysis and assessing it. And I think this is a pretty good job. So I just wanted to say that from the outside perspective, it's well done.
Thank you. You mentioned about India and China, etc. But I mean, this Essex County Council isn't quite India or China. I think Councillor Hibb is right in saying that we could probably push more in those sort of areas to show our view of it. Now, I don't know if there's any scope for doing that or whatever, but I think there's probably is scope for doing things like that. Does anybody want to comment on that? Andrew?
Sorry, if I may, I think the role of this committee is to decide whether the risk rating is at the right level. The actions that the council can take in response to the risks are probably those held under under the responsibility of other committees or the cabinet, indeed. So I guess the question for the for this audit and governance committee is are they satisfied that the risk treated is at the right level, or whether it needs to be at a different rating?
I mean, I understand that. I understand that on this piece of paper, B2, it's up for argument. But I don't think it hurts to raise this discussion, even at this committee was not totally our remit. I wouldn't like to stifle Councillor Heap and say what he wants to say at this point in time, anyway. But so I think we understand that it's the risk level, whether it should be B2 or B1, almost immaterial in that respect. What you do about it, and what the decisions are made by the committees that are responsible for this. But if that's the view, does anybody else want to say anything on that level? No, I don't think so. Okay, so Councillor Heap thinks it should be at a higher level. You think it should be A1?
Yes, I do.
Okay, anybody else agree with that? Anybody else want to say anything about that? I presume that nobody agrees with it then.
I think that signifies that everybody in this committee is too old.
Probably true as well. But,
Yeah, Chairman, can I ask Councillor Heap to withdraw that remark? That's ageist and against our policies.
yes, I think you might want to say something against that, Councillor Heap. But I'm sure he didn't do it that way.
I heartily apologise for everybody aged over 30 if I offended them in any way, shape or form.
Thank you. So, at the moment,
Chairman, can I propose that in terms of the way forward, if you carry on with this report, perhaps it's an appropriate time to get a report in the future when on the progress of the action plan for our actions on climate emergency that you can actually look at from a governance point of view to make sure that that is being handled in the correct way. If it's not, you then may wish to revisit the rating for this risk.
so sensible. Is anybody happy with that? To come forward with the actions taking place to make sure they fit within the governance frame, not particularly commenting on the actions, because that's not our role. Everybody?
Well, we have declared a climate emergency, so every single decision that council makes should be judged against that climate emergency, surely.
Surely. Any other comments on that? I can see silence everywhere. Okay. Laura, can we mark that down in minutes, please?
Yeah, we can. The action to bring a report on the action plan from a government's perspective in terms of what the actions have been taken to take the climate emergency forward.
Yeah. And then we can review then at the next meeting when they come forward to review the level B1, B2, A1, A2, etc. Okay, can we move on then to item 10? Is that correct, Laura?
It is, yes.
Which is
Chairman, before you start, may I give my apologies for joining the meeting late. I've been in London all day and was caught in terrible traffic getting out, and I've only literally just got back home. So sincere apologies there.
okay. Hold just a second. Yeah, update from Andrew.
Yeah, I was going to ask Chris Hartgrove to take that item if that's okay.
Chris?
Okay, thank you, Chairman, and good evening, members. Item 10 then, the Treasury Management Mid-Year Update Report for 2021. Members may recall considering the 3-year Treasury Management Strategy back in January 2019 that was subsequently adopted by Council in the February. Appendix A on pages 86 to 99 of your agenda this evening provides a mid-year update on the 2021 element of that strategy. It considers both the borrowing and the investment activity during the year to date. The report also considers how the Council performed against the relevant Treasury management indicators set for 2021. Turning to the highlights then. In terms of borrowing, if you look at the table 3 on page 91, the mid-year borrowing position as at the 30th of September increased from £224 million to £240.5 million compared to the position at 31st of March. All borrowing is owed to the Public Works Loans Board, or PWLB as it's known. Turning to investments then, table 4, page 92, the mid-year investment position as at the 30th of September reduced from 22.1 million to 1.2 million compared to the position at the 31st of March 2020. This was held exclusively in instant access accounts in NatWest, our main bankers. I'll talk about that in a moment. Turning to non-treasury investments then, table 5, page 93, an analysis of the Council's commercial property investments is also presented. It shows a balance sheet value of 138 million at the start of the year, and overall net income from the portfolio for the first 6 months was 3.7 million. The committee should note here that income reflects the accrued position currently in the Council's books, which does not take account of the collectability of the income. So far, there have been no write-offs on this income source since the start of COVID-19, with the Council's portfolio appearing relatively resilient in the circumstances. However, an increase in write-offs cannot be ruled out moving forwards, should I say. And additional provision has therefore been made within the Council's general bad debt provision for this purpose, should it be needed. Moving on to the compliance part of the report then, pages 93 to 99. The majority of the Treasury management indicators were met. However, 2021 has so far been a truly exceptional year, which follows on from 1920, in which the Council extended its commercial investments and created Qualis, both stimulating a greater throughput in cash. The government response to the pandemic added to that greatly and created cash flows that I've never previously witnessed at a district council in my career. Members may recall from my report to the committee in September that we closed the year with an exceptionally high balance on the 31st of March of 2020 of 22.1 million. The forecast immediately prior to that was for a substantial reduction in cash to be held by the end of April. However, in the event, the very opposite subsequently happened, with the government quickly announcing at very short notice, literally about 3 days' notice, that we were about to receive £30 million in advance funding for the business support grant scheme. This was added to by £10 million received in pre-arranged short-term borrowing for the purpose of funding Qualis. And of course, April is traditionally a peak cash flow month anyway, due to the annual influx of council tax and business rates receipts at the start of the year. The cash holding peaked very briefly at 70.5 million on the 15th of April, although quickly declined thereafter as short-term borrowing was repaid and the business support grants were paid to local businesses. Unfortunately, our normal refuge in similar situations, local authority lending, was blocked on this occasion, as other local authorities were in exactly the same position, and everyone was looking to lend, but there were no local authority borrowers. As a footnote to the story, perhaps, our cash holdings reduced to as low as 1.2 million on the 30th of September, which rather ironically, perhaps, briefly amounted to a technical breach of our liquidity target of maintaining a minimum £3 million balance as presented in page 97 of the report. The committee will no doubt recall the recommendation from the September meeting to increase the council's investment limits in money market funds. This was subsequently adopted by the council, and it has given the Treasury Management team greater ability to manoeuvre in what is still a relatively volatile cash flow situation, and is so far working well. Finally, turning to Appendix B of the report on page 100, an updated minimum revenue provision, or MRP policy, is presented and recommended. It complies with the legislative requirements and ensures the council acts prudently in setting aside funds to meet the repayment of principal on loans taken out on the general fund. It should be emphasised that this applies to general fund borrowing only and not housing revenue HRA borrowing. Although it is perhaps worthy of comment that the council has made some voluntary MRP contributions towards some of its HRA borrowing in the past. The need for updating the MRP policy has also increased due to the evolving transactional activity with Qualis, and the recommended approach on external loans is therefore made clear in the second from last paragraph, whereby capital receipts from external loans will be utilised to make MRP contributions. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Chris? I've got a question while other people are thinking. Historically, our yield for commercial property investments, we notice here it looks like it's 2.6%. But in the past, has it been higher than that, lower than that?
Sorry, I'm relatively new to the commercial property portfolio and AirPin in particular. That's based on the balance sheet values, which is not necessarily one and the same as the purchase price of the individual assets. It would take more detailed analysis to produce that. But it's a fair question and something worth exploring, I think.
I mean, if you're later on that, but I just did wonder about it.
Yeah, on the new acquisitions, they're pretty much one and the same. But on the older acquisitions that were purchased some time ago, and there'll be numerous revaluations that have been undertaken since then. So the balance sheet value is not necessarily a good barometer, which is why I didn't put the percentage returns in a separate column.
The value's gone up with the properties, the yield will be even worse. Anyway.
Yeah, true.
Anybody got any questions here? I can't see any waving hands. Yes, I can. Councillor Heath. You're on mute. Sorry, he's gone.
No, no surprise there. It's quite fun, actually. I have the same questions every time. Midterm management mid-year update. I know this is only going to 2021, and in 2022 we have to pay back a lot of money. Is this actually going to happen? I ask this every time. Still have no answer. Maybe Councillor Phillips would like to intervene at that point.
Councillor, I think you're referring to the HRA repayments.
When is it going to happen?
If you had been at Council House Building Cabinet Committee, I think that was only last night. I was specifically requesting an update to the HRA account forecast plan. So that should, I think, give us the information that you and I both significantly desire to have. And we were told last night that that is in progress and will be coming forward very shortly. Now, whether that's before the end of this year, I don't know. They didn't have a confirmed date for me at King's House Building Cabinet Committee, but it's clearly part of what we need to do.
think Councillor Philip is frozen.
It was too exciting.
He's totally gone. Well, only he can answer your question, but did you get enough out of that before he vanished off the scene?
Well, as long as Deloitte aren't doing the auditing and sorting out how we're going to pay it back, then we might find by the end of the year. So, yeah.
Chair, if I may, and Chris might want to come in and help me on this one, really. I think 2022 represents a refinancing event. I mean, some of the loans that were taken are block loans and were taken on a maturity profile. This means at the end in 2022 that they'll need to be refinanced. There are requirements within the 30-year business plan for repayments, but it doesn't necessarily mean the entire amount that is due to be refinanced needs to be repaid at that point in time. So some, I imagine, will be retaken in the form of new borrowing, and some of that loan will be repaid. But the repayments will be in line with the repayment profile set out within the 30-year business plan. Whilst the 2022 event is more of a treasury management event as opposed to a business plan event. I don't know if Chris would agree with that.
Well, that brings you back to a point that I asked a while ago. Sorry, before Chris completes the answer. I did ask whether we should borrow again or refinance again when rates were historically low, because this is on a variable rate and we've no idea what's going to happen in 2021. Rates are very low at this moment. Is it not going to happen now? If you're going to refinance, do it now. We get a low rate.
Just to sort of provide a slight bit of background here. The 30, I think it's 33 million-ish, something like that, on variable rate is due to mature in March 2022. And that I couldn't quote the interest rate off the top of my head. I think it's about 3.1 or 3.2%, actually quite high. But we are as Andrew says, it is potentially a refinancing event. Just to sort of so members are aware, we've actually got a reserve with 12.8 million already set aside to repay the principal on that loan. That was what it was originally there for. And we'll be taking advice. It is on the radar, and we'll be taking advice from our Treasury Management advisors, Arlene Close, in the coming months ahead as to how we go about that, whether that's partially refinanced or fully refinanced. With it being unlikely, of course, that we'll be able to bridge that gap to repay it in full in the time allowed.
I think it's 12.7 and it's been saved in the last 8 years, so that's not very good going if we need to pay back 33 in 2 years' time.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, anybody else have any comments on this? Right, on the last page though, page 100. Dane, you were asking us if we'd review this and agree with it, yes? That's your page 100. Okay, so have we got any comments on that, please? I'll take it we do agree. Okay, thank you. Before we finish, there's one thing I missed off asking under risk management, and Councillor Phillips here, maybe he can answer that. And that is we give the inspector in the local plan a hard time for not completing this job. Councillor Phillips, you're there?
You're muted, Councillor Phillips.
Yeah, I'm back. Sorry, Councillor Hadley. I seem to have an unstable internet connection at the moment. Could you repeat your question? I got as far as the inspector.
Yeah, I keep seeing the inspector saying that you can't complete the report because of other commitments, etc. I hope that when you meet this person or these people, somebody gives them a really hard time for not putting us at the top of the list.
Unfortunately, Chairman, the inspector is divvied up by the planning inspectorate across a number of tasks and is not allowed to prioritise one over another. Her schedule is booked out for many months in advance. COVID gave us a number of issues around the local plan, and we missed a slot. I do, talking to my planning portfolio colleague, hold out a reasonable degree of hope that she is. We are moving towards the top of her pile and will be addressed fairly shortly. Hopefully, at the same time, we will have good news from Natural England, and if all that works together in the right direction, I'm not going to tempt fate by saying progress we made, but I'll just touch wood at this point and think we're maybe closer to progress than we have been for a little while.
Seeing the date summer 2021 mentioned, is that optimistic or pessimistic?
I think that's probably realistic, Chairman. I'm not obviously involved in the day-to-day of that anymore, but if realistically, there's not much of December left. If she works on it, say in January, we get a report from her in outlining main modifications, consultation to take place. That could, following preparation, happen, say the end of March, maybe. The challenge there is obviously PERDA. Given a fair wind, we could have a consultation shortly after PERDA ends. That would take the mandatory 6 weeks. So given that, is summer 2021 a realistic option? I think it's a realistic option. Without more information on the day-to-day stuff, I couldn't tell you whether it's a pessimistic realistic option or an optimistic realistic option.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Okay. Anybody else?
Sorry, what was that?
I don't know what you last heard.
I'll say it again. Has anybody got any other business to raise?
There is one thing, and possibly you covered this before I joined, which I joined at 7, so you might have covered this before. At the last meeting, we did have a thing about the government extended the deadline for the audit report, and that was going to make Deloitte much easier with what they had to do, and their teams would not be spread so thinly, and it would be here now.
Chair,
it's not.
Chair, it's item 11, sorry, on the agenda. Do you want me to give an update, a verbal update of the current position?
Please do. Sorry.
Yes, so I suppose it is a matter of significant disappointment, I think, really to us that we are unable to present the accounts to you tonight. It should have been presented to the last audit committee at the end of November, but shortly before the production deadline for papers occurred, our auditors approached us to say that for reasons of capacity within their organisation, they were unable to make that deadline. I spoke at length, as did Chris Hartgrove, to the auditor, Craig Wisdom, who apologised essentially for the situation and acknowledged it was their fault essentially. They felt that they'd be able to make a slightly delayed deadline if we were able to reschedule the audit committee, which is effectively what we did, and this is why it's tonight. But as part of the ongoing audit process, that they brought in a different auditor to look at the work that had been completed, and they raised a number of new questions as part of their work. And it became clear that we'd be unable to answer those whilst at the same time preparing the budget, which is obviously a considerable focus for us at the moment. So it became clear that they'd be unable to sign off the accounts at tonight's meeting. Craig Craig, the auditor, was intending to attend tonight to explain the situation and to put his hand up essentially to say that it was Deloitte's fault. But unfortunately, he's caught COVID now, so is unable to attend this meeting this evening. As I say, we felt that, and has been supported by Deloitte, is our processes were much better this year than they were last year, and they were very supportive of the work that we've done, and we put a lot of time and effort into making sure that our accounts were in the right state, a fit state, to present to audit. But the auditors didn't manage to complete all of their audit work during their allotted time. And therefore, when they came back to revisit it, there were further questions that they identified at that point in time. As I say, it's considerable disappointment to us really, and to the finance team who put a great deal of effort into making sure that they met the deadlines and that we published our accounts on time. But it's the auditors' issue for the fact they were unable to sign it off on time, which they should have done before the 30th of November. I would say that we are by no means in an isolated position in that regard. Through conversations with Sarah Marsh today, I believe about half of all public sector bodies are in the same, sort of local government bodies are in the same situation and have had their accounts, not had their accounts signed by the 30th of November deadline. That's a combination of an ongoing capacity issue in the auditing sector that we saw last year, where many councils equally didn't get their accounts signed off on time, but also some of the impacts of COVID on finance teams, not just in terms of staff being available to do the work, but also being distracted by other work associated with managing the impacts of COVID as well. So it's been a difficult year. Some councils have been unable to complete the work because of capacity. Others, it's due to the auditors being unable to complete the work because of capacity in their area. And COVID again is a complication for them in arriving at that position. We are currently, the plan is to make sure that we meet the next audit committee deadline, and it's certainly the priority of our auditors. I know that they want to get the work done by the end of December. So they are in a position to produce the papers in good time and get the accounts signed off probably by on the 25th of January audit committee meeting. So that is the update of where we are effectively. As I say, it's disappointing, but it's circumstances outside of our control, unfortunately, and not due, I think, to issues within the finance or processes that we have at EFDC this year.
Very good. Thanks a lot for that. Any comments on that one? Councillor Heath?
Well, it's still 2 years that we've had the accounts very, very late indeed, and hopefully this time we won't go over the time for the new budget before we get the audit report. And I understand that other councils may be going through the same thing, but I'm not really impressed with that. We should be exemplary.
Chair, if I can, as I say, I think we took all the actions that we were required to take, and it was the auditors who were unable to complete their sign off, unfortunately, within time. So I really don't feel that it was the fault of EFDC and their staff and processes this year. I think it's entirely down to the external auditors and their inability to meet the deadlines.
Thank you, Simon. I agree entirely on this. Okay, firstly, I apologise for jumping over item 11 and going to any other business. Having said that, is there any other business? The last time I asked the question, there wasn't, I don't think, apart from Councillor Heath. So, if we can go on to the next item 13, exclusion of the public and press. There's nothing to exclude at all. So, we then go on to finish the meeting at 19:55. Thank you very much for coming. I'll see you all next year.
Chairman, thank you for your timely completion.
Well done.